Every human being at some point has felt the fire of disrespect burning inside. That feeling of being treated with disregard, of being interrupted, diminished, or ignored. Sometimes it's a poorly chosen word, sometimes it's the tone, the look, the laughter. But what hurts the most is not the gesture itself. It's the momentary loss of control it provokes. You feel the blood rush, your chest tighten, your mind scream for an answer. And for a few seconds, it seems that all your dignity depends on a perfect sentence. Seneca said that anger is a kind of brief madness, and it is in this brevity that many destroy the respect they took years to build. Because reacting badly to disrespect is, ironically, a way of disrespecting yourself as well. When you lose control, the other person doesn't win, you surrender. And it is exactly at this point that Stoic philosophy becomes practical, not controlling others, but mastering your own response. We live in a time when immediate reaction is mistaken for strength, but the world doesn't need more reactive people. It needs resolute people. People who know when to speak, when to be silent, and above all, how to preserve their own value even when provoked. This is the true test of respect. Not what you do when you are praised, but what you do when you are humiliated. And that's what this video is about. You will understand how to react to disrespect strategically and balanced, without losing self-control and without letting the other person dictate your behavior. You will learn that there are 6 different levels of response and that each of them represents a stage of emotional maturity. In the first, emotion takes command and destroys reason. In the last, the mastery is complete. The other person can try to provoke you, but can no longer find where to hit. These levels show the path from impulsiveness to wisdom, from vulnerability to serenity. They teach you to replace automatic reactions with conscious responses, so that no word or attitude of another person has the power to throw you off balance. You will realize that disrespect is not the end of dignity. It is the beginning of learning. It is a mirror of your own mind. It shows you how far you have really evolved. Because while the common man reacts, the mature man responds. And there is a chasm between these two words. Imagine a man being provoked in public. The other person's voice rises. People look. The silence weighs heavily. Inside, everything in him screams to react, but he breathes, looks into their eyes, and says nothing. 3 seconds later, the power of the situation changes sides. The provoker loses control. The calm one takes over. This is the kind of strength that the world has not yet learned to measure. Epictetus said, "It is not what they say that hurts, but what we allow it to mean." Responding to disrespect, therefore, is not defending the ego. It is preserving peace, because every attack is an invitation to disorder, and whoever accepts the invitation loses. Whoever refuses grows. In this video, you will discover how to refuse this invitation, step by step, level by level. You will understand why anger is the first reflex, but silence is the first power. You will learn to transform discomfort into direction and instinct into strategy. And in the end, you will realize that respect is not something that is demanded from others. It is something that is maintained within oneself. So before we continue, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about what really builds presence, respect, and mental peace. And tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching this video? I want to know how far this reflection is reaching. Now take a deep breath, because the first level is the most explosive and also the most common, the moment when disrespect touches the ego and the mind loses control, the level of emotional explosion. Level 1, the emotional explosion. The first level is the most instinctive and the most destructive. It is the one in which disrespect touches the ego and the body reacts before the mind awakens. The blood boils, the breathing accelerates, and suddenly reason ceases to exist. The will is to respond, retaliate, shout. The mind convinces itself that the immediate response is synonymous with strength, but it is precisely the opposite. At that moment, the other person has already won. The emotional explosion is the most primitive reflex of the human being. It is born from the need to protect one's own image. You feel that you need to defend yourself, to show that you do not accept being treated that way. But by reacting, the focus changes. The attention goes from the offense to your reaction, the disrespect fades, and the lack of control gains the spotlight. Seneca said that the best response to offense is contempt, and perhaps the phrase has never been so necessary. Today, anger has become a spectacle. We live in an era in which misunderstandings become videos, insults become posts, and impulse becomes content. And the more people watch, the more pride feels it needs to win. But there is no victory in reacting to what is small, only wear and tear. Imagine a common scene. Someone confronts you in public, raises their tone, exposes you in front of others. You feel your body stiffen. The will is to return in the same coin, to show that you will not be inferior. But as you speak, you realize that the tone comes out louder than you would like. The countenance changes, the heart races, and in the end, even if you have won the discussion, you come out emptied. It is a triumph of seconds followed by regret. Because when disrespect pulls you into the field of anger, you play on the enemy's ground. Epictetus said that no one provokes you without your consent. And it is here that the first level teaches you the hardest lesson. Disrespect only enters if you open the door. Provocation is an invitation to disorder, and you decide whether to accept it or not. The problem is that most accept without realizing it. They react so as not to appear weak, but the weakness is precisely in reacting. Strength is holding back the instinct and choosing the time of the response. The emotional explosion is like fire. It starts hot, but it goes out quickly and leaves traces, broken relationships, regrets, mental wear and tear. You even feel that you imposed yourself, but deep down you know that you lost control. And respect without self-control does not survive. This level is necessary because it reveals how much wounded ego there is still within us, but it is only the beginning of the journey. What comes next is the first real test of mastery, the ability to pause before responding. It is the moment when the body still burns, but the mind begins to cool down. 3 seconds, 1 breath, a firm look, and the power changes sides. In the next level, you will understand how this simple pause is capable of disarming the aggressor and restoring your control, without saying a single word. Level 2, the cold pause. The second level begins when the fire of emotion meets the air of consciousness. It is the instant when, before reacting, you stop. 3 seconds that seem eternal, and in that short interval, something changes. The anger is still there, throbbing in the chest, but now it no longer commands the body. You breathe, and the breath returns reason. This is the first real victory, not over the other person, but over yourself. Because while the first level is mastery of instinct, the second is mastery of choice. You don't respond on impulse. You choose the time of the response. And that time, even if short, is enough to change the course of a conversation, of a day, sometimes of an entire life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you get angry because of something external, it is not what bothers you, but your judgment about it." The cold pause is exactly the moment when judgment is suspended. You observe the attack without merging with it. The mind wants to react, but the body obeys the calm. It is the instant when you realize that you have 2 options: act consciously or repeat the pattern. Imagine someone provoking you on purpose, at work, in traffic, or even at home. The words come loaded with irony, seeking to throw you off balance. In the past, you would respond in the same tone. Today, no. You just take a deep breath and look, in silence. The other person gets lost, confused, because they expected war and receive tranquility. And that tranquility, even without words, is intimidating. Silence is the first form of power. It interrupts the game of provocation, cuts the cycle of emotional escalation, and repositions the energy of the conversation. The cold pause is not passivity. It is concentrated intention. It is the moment when respect begins to rebuild, because disrespect needs an audience to exist. And when you don't offer a stage, the theater disassembles. Seneca said that the wise man rises more powerful from the falls of anger, and that is exactly the feeling of the cold pause. You still feel the flame, but it no longer burns you. Anger turns into data, information about the other person, and no longer an order to react. You observe the behavior of the disrespectful person with curiosity, not with pain. And that changes everything, because whoever observes governs. This pause is also physiological. In 3 seconds of deep breathing, the brain regains control of the body, reduces adrenaline, and prevents the mind from making decisions under a chemical storm. What seemed simple, a second of silence, is, in fact, an act of biological and emotional intelligence. And the beauty of this level is that it happens in the invisible. No one sees the battle, but it is happening inside you. It is there, in that small space between the stimulus and the response, that respect is reborn. But silence by itself is still only defense. From here on, you will begin to transform silence into strategy. In the next level, respect begins to rebuild through the right word, the one that disarms without hurting and questions without attacking. Level 3, the clear question. After calm is recovered, it is time to reposition the dialogue. The mind is no longer in flames, now it sees. And it is at this point that one of the most elegant and powerful tools of maturity is born, the clear question. Most discussions are not won by those who have more arguments, but by those who have more control. And asking a question is the most subtle way to take control without having to raise your voice. A simple sentence like, "What exactly did you mean by that?" can transform the field of conversation. It is not defense, it is a mirror. The other person is forced to listen to themselves, to rethink their own tone, to realize what they have just said. This level represents the transition from reaction to direction. You don't close yourself off or explode, you lead. And that completely changes the energy of the interaction. The question does not carry anger, it carries intention. It shows that you were not hurt, you are just observing, and whoever observes intimidates. Think of a scenario, a work meeting, several people at the table, and someone makes a cutting comment. Something that subtly diminishes you, but in a calculated way. Instead of justifying yourself, you lean slightly forward and ask in a calm voice, "Excuse me, what exactly did you mean by that?" The environment changes. The laughter dissolves, the false lightness disappears, and the disrespect is returned to the owner. The strength of the question lies precisely in its neutrality. There is no shouting, there is no defense, there is awareness. Seneca said that whoever dominates the dialogue dominates anger. And that phrase perfectly summarizes this level. The clear question transforms the attack into analysis. It prevents the offender from continuing to hide behind irony or provocation, because it forces them to explain what they previously only insinuated. And whoever is forced to explain disrespect is usually ashamed of their own gesture. The question also protects you from the poison of assumption. A large part of the fights are born not from what was said, but from what was interpreted. The question clears the air before pride contaminates it. It puts light where there was shadow, and light is the beginning of respect. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself that it is possible to overcome offense by reason, not by response. And that is exactly what the question does. It brings reason where before there was only emotion. It allows you to continue firm, whole, calm, without being silent. Because responding with clarity is not weakness, it is strategy. Deep down, this level shows that disrespect does not need to be faced with a sword, but with a mirror. When you respond with a question, you are saying, "I am not the target of your emotion. I am the reflection of it." And at that moment, the power changes place. But there are situations in which not even the question is enough. Sometimes the other person insists, the tone rises, the provocation continues. It is at this moment that respect needs to stop being just communication and become position. The next level is where the limit is declared, not to hurt, but to protect what is yours. Level 4, the limit assertion. Until now, you have breathed, observed, and led. But there comes a point when silence and the question are not enough. There are situations in which disrespect needs to hit a firm wall, your limit. And it is at this level that your calm gains contour. The limit assertion is the quiet voice that says, "I don't speak in that tone. We can talk, but not like this." If it is to continue, it needs to be with respect. 3 simple sentences, none aggressive, but all loaded with internal authority, because the tone does not come from anger, it comes from the awareness of value. You don't try to win the discussion, you just reposition the field of the conversation. The human being who never sets limits is condemned to live in environments that wear them down, and whoever learns to set them begins, for the first time, to teach others how to treat them. Limit is not a wall, it is a coexistence manual, and, when it is said with firmness and serenity, it educates without offending. Imagine a woman at work who, for months, tolerated condescending comments from her boss. One day he returns to use the same tone, a smile in the corner of his mouth, the usual irony. But this time, she looks firm and says, without raising her voice, "I don't talk to those who talk to me like that." Silence. The air changes weight. She returns to typing, without drama, without discourse, and something inside her changes forever. Because in that instant, she understood that respect is not demanded, it is imposed by presence. Seneca said that whoever accepts everything deserves everything. The phrase is harsh but necessary. The world perceives when your limit is real and also when it is just an attempt to appear strong. The true limit is silent, firm, coherent. It does not need explanation because it is supported by a previous conduct. The mistake of many is to confuse limit with attack. The limit is the wall that protects the house, not the wall that separates the world. Putting it is not pushing people away, it is preserving what is essential so that they can approach in the right way. Epictetus said that the dignity of a man is not in being invincible, but in being unshakable. And that is exactly what this level teaches. Being unshakable is not allowing the other person to dictate the tone of the conversation. The tone is yours. The rhythm is yours. The limit is your sacred space, and whoever crosses it needs to find silence, not chaos. Sometimes the other person retreats, other times they insist. And when they insist, respect needs to stop being a word and become an action. It is the moment when the limit begins to have a consequence, when you leave, end, or change the game. And it is in this movement that respect is consolidated. In the next level, you will understand how to act, not just talk. How to transform the limit into a concrete decision that shows without anger that respect is not negotiable. Level 5, the consequences. When the limit is ignored, there is only one language that the disrespectful person understands, the consequence. And this is the 5th level, the moment when respect stops being conversation and becomes conduct. Because every limit that has no consequence is just a suggestion. Most people get lost here. They talk about respect, complain about the lack of it, but continue in the same place, surrounded by the same attitudes that they tolerate. Respect weakens every time you say enough but remain, every time you say never again and accept again. Words lose weight when they are not followed by action, and without realizing it, the other person learns that they can cross the limit whenever they want, because nothing happens. The consequences do not need to be theatrical. They need to be clear. Sometimes it is just getting up and leaving the conversation, ending a call when the tone goes beyond the acceptable. Stop responding to those who repeatedly cross the line of respect. Refuse an invitation from someone who has already shown the type of energy they bring. Small actions, done in silence, but that communicate loudly. Respect is not how much you talk, it is how much you tolerate. And at this level, tolerance ceases to be weakness and becomes a measure of value. You don't need to explain yourself. You just act. And action is the language of coherence. Imagine a man in a family argument. For months, he tries to dialogue, maintain the tone, avoid conflict. But every time he tries, the other side raises their voice, repeats insults, ignores the limits. One day, he simply gets up and says calmly, "I can't talk like this anymore. When there is respect, I will come back," and leaves, without shouting, without dramatizing. His silence weighs more than 1,000 answers. And from that day on, the environment treats him differently. Because for the first time, they understood that his patience was not submission, it was self-control. Seneca said that strength is not in enduring everything, but in knowing what should not be endured. This level is about that, about stopping confusing resistance with surrender, about understanding that maintaining inner peace is more important than saving any relationship that costs one's own dignity. By the way, tell me something. When someone disrespects you, do you usually withdraw, or do you insist on being understood? Think about it for a moment, because there is a huge difference between seeking reconciliation and letting yourself be hurt again. The consequences are the point where respect matures. Here, there is no room for revenge, only for coherence. You don't punish, you distance yourself. You don't humiliate, you just preserve yourself. And this gesture, which seems simple, teaches more than any discourse. Epictetus wrote that, "No man can hurt you without your permission. The consequences are precisely the cancellation of that permission. From here on, disrespect may even happen, but it no longer reaches you, because the other person's energy no longer has anywhere to fix itself. And it is this liberation that leads us to the last level. The calmest and highest stage, strategic forgetting, when respect reaches its purest form and disrespect simply ceases to matter. Level 6. Strategic forgetting. Reaching this point is reaching the quietest point of power. The 6th level is not about what you do, but about what you decide not to carry. After setting limits and acting firmly, there remains one last step. Let go, not for the good of the other person, but for your own peace. Strategic forgetting is the art of not granting mental space to disrespect. It is not about denying what happened, but about choosing what deserves to remain within you. Because every time you relive the offense, the offender continues to exist in your mind. And it is there that disrespect becomes prison. Seneca said that the best revenge is not to be like the one who hurt you. And that is what this level represents. The moment when respect becomes self-preservation and not self-promotion. You no longer want to prove anything. You don't want to be understood. You don't want to close a cycle. You just want to move on in peace. The silence here is not containment, it is freedom. Imagine someone who was unfairly humiliated in public. He could defend himself, expose the truth, try to clear his own name. But he decides not to waste energy, not because he gave up, but because he realized that the noise does not return dignity. Dignity is already intact, even if the world does not realize it. And this choice disconcerts everyone. The offender gets irritated, the public gets confused, but he moves on. Because whoever dominates forgetting dominates the game. Epictetus taught that what depends on you, keep. What does not depend, give to the wind. Strategic forgetting is that Giving to the wind what does not depend on you. Not taking revenge, not justifying, not collecting grudges. Letting time do what the discussion would not do. The most curious thing is that at this level, the respect of others grows naturally, because there is something deeply magnetic in those who do not cling to the past, who does not speak badly of those who hurt them, who does not retell the story to extract pity or validation. The admired one does not carry exposed scars, they carry silent lessons. They learn the difference between memory and resentment. The first teaches, the second imprisons. Stoic wisdom does not ask for forgetting out of weakness, but out of emotional intelligence. Because the mind does not have infinite space. Everything you keep takes up space. And what takes up too much space ends up becoming weight. Strategic forgetting is an internal cleansing. You take out of the mind what cannot be resolved and return the focus to what builds. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "Whatever happened has already happened. It is your judgment that makes it continue." He knew that time does not erase the pain, but the mind can erase the attachment to the pain. And that is the true closure of the cycle of disrespect, when the other person still tries to provoke you, but you are no longer there. The tranquil mind is the greatest sign of self-respect. And when you reach this point, something changes in the presence. People realize that there is something different about you, a calm that cannot be faked, a type of strength that does not shout, but silences the environment around it. It is respect in its purest form, the respect that is born from forgetting. Because in the end, overcoming disrespect is becoming unreachable by it. Responding to disrespect is one of the most subtle tests of life. Because it does not test what you know, it tests who you are. With each provocation, the universe seems to ask, do you still need to prove your worth, or have you already understood that it does not depend on the other person? The 6 levels we have traveled are more than stages of reaction. They are mirrors of evolution, from impulse to wisdom, from ego to serenity. In the first level, the fire of anger. In the second, the breath that rescues consciousness. In the third, the question that returns clarity. In the fourth, the limit that firms identity. In the fifth, the action that confirms dignity. And finally, the sixth, forgetting, where respect transforms into freedom. This is the architecture of self-control. The more you master your own internal world, the less the external world reaches you. It is the opposite of what most believe. Being respected does not come from being feared or admired. It comes from being unshakable. And unshakability is not born of coldness, but of the understanding that the disrespect of the other person is a reflection of them, not you. Imagine how many situations could have ended differently if you had breathed before responding. How many times your peace was given in exchange for a phrase that you would not even remember now if you had silenced. Maturity is that, realizing that not every blow deserves a response, and that not every silence is weakness. There are silences that weigh more than any word. Seneca said that whoever gets angry with the insult becomes an accomplice to it. And true self-respect is born when you decide to no longer be an accomplice to what destroys you, when you choose to save energy only for what builds. The rest you watch pass, because what is not worthy of response is not worthy of permanence. Stoicism teaches that there is no greater power than self-mastery. And that is exactly what these 6 levels build, a path from the inside out. You start reactive, end serene, start inflamed, end lucid. And in the end, you understand that responding well is the highest form of respect for yourself. If this video made you reflect, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel. Here, each reflection is a reminder that strength is not in who wins by shouting, but in who wins without having to raise their voice. And tell me, in which of these 6 levels do you believe you are now? Perhaps the simple act of recognizing is already the first step to climbing to the next.